Here at the 2024 FIA Motorsport Games, we are getting ready for more race action, and it will come from the Formula 4 entry. Formula 4 are one-make single-seaters, and the drivers are all the stars of the future. The previous two editions of this have both been won by Italy, but we don't have an Italian representative on the grid this year, so a new nation certainly is going to come out on top, and it's going to be fascinating to see which country that is. Medals aren't awarded on this race. This will determine the grid. It is going to be a 20-minute race, and the cars making their way to the circuit in readiness then, with the medals coming on the main race later on in the weekend. David Addison and Joe Osborne are trackside. The grid is full then of Tatuus chassis with 1400cc turbocharged Abarth engine. They all, therefore, the drivers have the same type of car, the same engine, they're all on the same type of tyre, but it's different teams operating them, teams from the Spanish Formula 4 Championship. And F4, Joe, is now an internationally recognised category, and this is bringing the best of the young guns together.
Yep, first rung on the ladder all the way to F1, and that's where all of these young drivers will be aspiring to. Yavan David there, the fastest driver in qualifying, Sri Lanka on pole position in this race. Very good job. It was tight to this car of Spain, Juan Cota Alonso. Very, very quick, and less than a tenth of a second between them at the end of the qualifying session, which was held in wet conditions, wasn't it? So completely polar opposite to this race coming up, but also to the rest of the weekend that we'd had so far. So qualifying looking like it's going to be the only one where these drivers use their wet tyres. Going further down the grid, here we have Peru, Andrea Cardenas. Really good job to be on the front two rows. Obviously here the pole position is on the right hand side. That is the outside for turn one, but the cleaner part of the track, so it's not an obvious positive, the pole position here, in my opinion. Yes, you've got the cleaner part, but the track's not particularly dirty. You almost would rather the inside coming into turn one and turn number two. Second car on the second row, Luxembourg from Chester Keitha. Again, a strong job by him, looking nice and relaxed. Been racing in France for a lot of his career, a lot of podiums, and I think he could be an outsider for the win at the end of this qualifying race.
Got a couple of nations that have had grid drops, Israel being one of them for driving over the white line yesterday. As you look at Australian Griffin Peebles, and another nation that has been penalised is the UK, a grid drop as well for Reza Seaworthen for an infringement in yesterday's action as well. Reza Seaworthen is certainly one to watch from the UK because he's had a good season winning races in British Formula 4. And so after a good effort in qualifying, he ends up 6th on the grid. It is Malta at the back, it is Sri Lanka at the front, and there you're looking at the UK's Reza Seaworthen getting himself ready to go. The grid is formed for the Formula 4 qualifying race here in Valencia, and it is Sri Lanka on pole position. Down further on the grid with a three-place grid drop, Israel, Ariel Elkin representing them, and Greece, Philippe Armand Carras, 7th on the grid. Now, he was quickest in the second free practice session yesterday, but couldn't translate that in qualifying.
No, we saw some fast times coming at the end of that session as well, but yeah, the Greek car, very, very good. Japan here, Toshi Maruyama doing really well. Look like they're ready to go, don't they? Very G'd up. A lot of these drivers team up with a driver coach that will help them through their journey all the way through. Then we go to Slovakia of Riba. He was very quick in FP2 as well, and we saw him actually have a spin on his outlap in qualifying before composing himself and finding himself at the sharp end of the grid, racing under that brutal fish team that his father obviously helped set up. I think these guys all inside the top 10 are going to be confident of being able to get these cars to the sharp end of the grid, which is obviously going to be so important when it comes to medal time. Hong Kong as well there. Kai Shang Liu looking nice and composed there. All the drivers now just going through their final mental preps. Normally as a driver, you've got your mind where you're going to be placing the car. First couple of corners, I always used to like to have a plan A, B and C of what might happen, and weirdly it was always plan D that came out to be the realistic version of it. But it just feels like if you're well prepped and you're calm, everything else seems to flow. If you don't cover your bases, then that's when it starts to unravel beneath you.
Now, the man on pole position is Yevan David from Sri Lanka. And just to illustrate the point about how the Motorsport Games works and how drivers are able to move up through the ranks and represent their nation in different categories, he was a silver medalist 2 years ago in the karting sprint senior category. By the end of the day, he could have a gold FIA Motorsport Games medal to his credit as well, out of single-seaters. He's raced in the UAE and the Spanish F4 Championship this year. That, for Israel, is a driver who's been racing in America this season in the US Formula Juniors. Fourth currently is Ariel Elkin, Israeli karting champion, Italian karting champion, raced in both Italian and American Formula 4 last season. And he was a bronze medal winner in karting at the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games as well, in karting sprint junior.
Yeah, great CV, great driver. We saw him topping one of the free practices as well yesterday. He had already inherited a three-place grid drop, hadn't he, like you said, for crossing the white line in one of those free practices on pit exit. So that really hurt him, and then just couldn't seem to hook up the pace towards the end of qualifying where it really mattered. Brazil there, onto Czech Republic. So many nations being represented here, and yeah, everyone's so proud to represent it. So rare in motorsport to be able to use the whole car effectively as the flag. As you see some of those flags walking away, Austria, Angola. Great to see countries that we don't always naturally relate to motorsport doing so well at the FIA Motorsport Games.
So the grid starting to be cleared. This race is not a set number of laps. It is 20 minutes, the flag going out the first time the leader crosses the line. Once 20 minutes have elapsed, and the results of this determine the grid for the main race. As you look at another driver with a famous father, this is Oscar Wurz, one of the sons of Alexander Wurz, Alex Wurz, Le Mans winner, Grand Prix racer. Oscar Wurz yo-yoed a bit in qualifying, was up, was down, was up, was down, but in the end, only on the 8th row of the grid, only 15th, so he's got some work to do here. Yeah,
definitely wasn't happy at the end of that. We saw that as he trudged away at the end of qualifying on TV. Here we see that Angolan car, Lorenzo Campos. Again, all of these drivers saw the back end of the grid. Completely different mentality. Nothing to lose at this point. You might as well get on the front foot and be nice and aggressive. Portugal here, Francisco Manchedo. Again, looking very composed, just taking the final few deep breaths. Sometimes the drivers don't even like to make eye contact with the camera. The distraction is too much, so they ignore the obvious camera being shoved in their face.
Now, Formula 4 cars, everyone has the same. They are a slicks and wing single-seater. Some people moan about wings, say you can't overtake, but actually you can if the circuit allows, and these are relatively narrow cars. There are bits around here, corner after corner, where it's tough to overtake, but a nice long straight like this, is this a good slipstreaming part of the course?
Yeah, turn one isn't the biggest break zone. We saw in the GT race before, didn't we? Quite a few of the overtakes done into turn one, so turn one for sure. Turn number 2 as well is the next obvious one, the biggest break of the lap. You've also got chances to send lunges up at 6, 8 and 11, and then 14 as well, where we saw lots of these F4 cars locking a front left brake down the hill. We saw some locking up so hard they in fact went all the way down to canvas, so that could be a potential issue in this 20-minute race.
And therefore Qatar, towards the rear of the grid, is Bader Al-Sulaiti, the 2023 Qatar karting champion. Next on the grid is the Maltese karting champion, Niki Gauci, who's tested but not raced F4s up to this weekend. He's done hill climbs in Malta. Very, very good karter is Niki. He was in the kart enduro at Motorsport Games 2 years ago. So there's a lot of mileage there, but he's had a tough day thus far with penalties, with a spin and a bit of contact in the qualifying session, spin of his own. So it's been a tough day, but I think getting a race under his belt will boost his confidence for tomorrow. Yeah, and all the experience he'll be getting. This is exactly where he wants his career to go. So quite a brutal introduction, your first ever F4 race being in the FIA Motorsport Games, but the experience he's going to get from that is huge. Look at that grid. So many fast competitive drivers across so many championships across the globe in F4, so many regional championships. Almost has a bit of a world final feel to it. Everyone coming together, representing their nation, yes, but at the end of the day, these young drivers all want to do the best for themselves. So the green flag is shown, and the cars then set off on this formation lap, a chance to get some warmth into the Pirelli rubber, although not everybody away as they should be. But the car in question there, I think I'm right in saying, was the Slovakian car. doesn't fall to the back of the grid and therefore should be able to keep the grid position that it had earned out of qualifying. If everybody overtakes you, then you have to start at the back, but if it's everybody bar one, then you're all right to take your grid position. So Sri Lanka on pole, Yevin David the driver, and Spain alongside with Juan Cota representing his country. For Peru, third comes Andres Cardenas, and for Luxembourg, Chester Kiefer. Fifth on the grid, Australia, Griffin Peebles, the driver, and for the United Kingdom, Reza Seaworthen. Seventh, Philippe Carras for Greece, and eighth is Tosai Moriyama for Japan. Slovakia, ninth on the grid. Matus Riba is going to be alongside Hong Kong, China's Kei-Shun Liu. On the sixth row, there is Serbia, Andrea Kostic, the driver, and for Israel comes Ariel Elkin. Brazil a long way back on row 7. Matheus Comparato is one to watch. As for Czechia, the Czech Republic is Maximilian Carhan. Then for Austria, there is Oscar Wurz, and for Angola, Lorenzo Campos. The ninth row, Portugal and Argentina. Francisco Machido goes for Portugal, and Argentina represented by Gino Trappa. On row 10, Norway and Qatar. Norway's driver is Olav Var. For Qatar, it is Beda Al Sulaiti, and at the back of the grid come Malta, and Niki Gauci drives for his nation.
See the safety car just lining up there on the outside of turn 12, 13, just out of left shot here, so they all just follow on the opening lap just to clean up any carnage. But I think everyone realizing that they've got a race later on as well is just potentially going to be a bit more respectful than we've seen previously in an F4 race. Let's see anyway.
Yeah, there's always that chance of banging wheels. These are young guns, feisty drivers, but it's this race that gives you a grid for the main race. It's the main race that gives you the medals, and thinking medals as the cars come to the grid. Spain currently is the leading nation. Medals were being awarded yesterday because we had some of the rally contests decided yesterday, and so it is Spain with 2 golds to Italy's 1. Third, currently United Kingdom with a silver, so has Turkey and so has Slovakia. So there is Juan Cota for Spain, and that's the nation that leads the medals table going into this qualifying race. No medals on the line here, but just to make the point, we need to keep referring to this medals table. It's fascinating to see how it's going to change and evolve. Spain leading at the moment. We're ready to go then. 20 minutes are ahead of us, the qualifying race for Formula 4, and now the pressure is on. A good start, absolutely essential here.
Yeah, Javan David hitting his marks perfectly. Look at that yellow line aligned with the front right. Cota Alonso slightly off his. Is that enough? Might only be 30 centimetres, but into turn 1, that might make the difference.
Green flag at the back shows that everybody has returned for the formation lap, and we are ready to go. Lights out, blast off, and let's see who has made the best start as 1 or 2 cars are stranded on the grid. They will hopefully get going, as it is a good getaway being made by Sri Lanka down towards turn 1. Spain has dropped back a little bit, it seems, as they dive down towards the first corner, and a challenge being made by Peru on the inside for second place, but not quite able to wriggle through on the inside line as they get up towards turn 2 now. They've all survived the dramas of turn 1. A big lock up there going up towards 2 as the cars go through that long left-hander and sprint out the other side. So Spain, I think it is, in the lead with a good getaway by Juan Cota to move ahead of Yevon David for Sri Lanka. And then behind, you've got Chester Kiefer for Luxembourg in number 2, looking to make progress as well.
Yeah, forcing Reza Seaworthen from the United Kingdom out wide there. Really good battle. I think there was even contact between those two coming out too. Saw a bit of tyre smoke. Hong Kong locking up big time into turn 2. Looked like it was Australia and Greece away slowly off the grid. Looks like they've dropped all the way back. So both cars with a bad start there. Peru mounted a good attack, but it didn't look like they were able to make it stick.
The cars then coming out of turn 8 for the first time, and it is then Spain and Sri Lanka battling for the race lead. Juan Cota was ahead when we last saw, as the cars drop then now out of turn 11, and it is just Spain, Sri Lanka, the top 2. Peru is third with Cardenas, but that good getaway by Team Spain putting Juan Cota into the lead of the race right now as they wriggle their way up towards 13 for the first time and then onto the pit straight. So it is going to be Juan Cota ahead, but only just because, look, Yevon David is right up behind the Spanish F4 regular, and the Sri Lankan driver now trying to get a tow, and he is closing. On the defensive goes Cota, contact I felt there between the two of them, as on the outside line eventually Jevan David had nowhere else to go, but maybe he was caught out slightly by just how much speed he suddenly gained, and Kotar is really having to defend up towards turn 2.
Yeah, massively so. Look at Peru down the inside. I was surprised the Sri Lankan car ducked back so late, and you're right, there was contact because the angle of the Spanish car was so abrupt in its nature. They must have just got loaded on the rear crash structure from the nose cone of Sri Lanka. First 4 all together. Luxembourg, can the United Kingdom get in on the action as well? It's all going to start to bunch up. Doesn't look like Spain have got the pace to break free, and the slipstream effect that we spoke about is so strong here. It's very hard to break the toe.
So it is Spain, Sri Lanka ahead of Peru, and then Luxembourg. 5th is the UK, and 6th right now it is Slovakia. As there, side by side, Brazil is about to lose out, I fear, because up on the inside goes Austria. Oscar Wirtz goes through, so he gains another place. Wirtz pushing forward all the time.
Yeah, really good start. We knew he wasn't happy after qualifying. Best way to fix that is to get on the front foot and make some moves, and that's exactly what he's doing. Great overhead shot here. Does look like Spain has just eased away in this middle sector, doesn't it? Sri Lanka slightly back. Peru probably the closest to the car in front in that group, having a bit of a look into 14. None of the cars locking up yet. 16 minutes remaining. They'll be looking to look after those tyres as much as possible. Spain have had a great second half of the lap and have slightly increased that lead. Yeah, another 2 tenths now. Gap 6 tenths as we see Sri Lanka now being attacked by Peru.
That's right, so Andres Cardenas for Peru on the back of the Sri Lankan car. Jevan David the driver, and while they squabble, that's giving the race leader the chance to make a break. Team Spain, Juan Kotar the driver, up towards turn 2. 4th Luxembourg, 5th the UK, 6th Slovakia, and they've all joined the party as well. So it's a long, long line of cars all squabbling over second place, and this is giving Spain the chance to just disappear up the road, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole field have gaps of less than a second, so every gap being a tenth or so it's able to everyone's to run so close. We knew there'd be a bit of slipstream. I didn't think it would be this strong. Some drivers will start to be biding their time and thinking, actually, I don't want to be leading because I want to be towards the back and use that slipstream towards the end of the race to get to the front. But I do think Spain are on the aggression. They're nearly a second clear. They've got the biggest gap of the whole field. That first to second gap is still growing as well.
And down at the foot now is Norway, because Olav Vara has dropped behind Malta. Nicky Gacci has gained a place as the cars now dive again down through 11. Look down from the drone, you can see the small gap that Spain has got. It's not yet a second. Fastest lap thus far by Israel. Ariel Elkin, we need to keep an eye on. He's up into 7th.
Yeah, Luxembourg running wide there, giving the place to the United Kingdom. Easy overtake when the driver runs wide. Keitha there will be ruining that mistake because it just looked like he simply let the car run too wide, lost traction, and then the United Kingdom just came past. There's Israel on the front foot as well. They've had a good start. They lost those 3 places because of the misdemeanor and free practice. So Ariel Elkin there is up to 7th and still looking fast.
Leaders come over the line. You can see the battle is on for 4th place, where it is the UK under attack from Luxembourg. Seaworthen just ahead for the UK. Then it's just a Kiefer behind for Luxembourg. The lead gap, 7 tenths of a second. Although Kotar is not under any attack in the lead for Spain, he's not disappearing up the road. They're just about staying with him.
Yeah, the slipstream stays effective for really 1.2, 1.3 seconds. So Sri Lanka will be doing everything in their power to stay in that pocket of air that just gets you sucked along at a slightly faster rate down the straights. Not too much dirty air. And Alonso looked like he probably went for the attack, pushed real hard to try and break that toe, but maybe has overworked his tyres this early on. Very easy to do. They grain up quite quickly, these Pirelli tyres on the F4, if you push too hard too early.
Good little battle lower down as well. Slovakia versus Israel here. Matos Riba in the orange car for Slovakia. Ariel Elkin for Israel right up behind him. Now, Elkin was the driver that topped FP2. Struggled a bit this morning in the damp in qualifying and had a grid drop. But now he's proving how well he can race because he's brought that car up to 7th, having started 12th on the grid. So Israel making good progress, and he's not done yet.
Really good. And Japan just sitting behind, waiting for this to potentially boil over. Nice, aggressive, but fair defence there from Slovakia. Israel starting to get a little bit more impatient potentially. This battle is going to heat up. I do think Japan as well is sitting in a nice place, like I said, behind. Any mistake, any gap shown on the inside, they'll be there to pounce and take advantage of either of these cars.
To the timing line they come once more then, and the lead gap was just about 8/10 of a second last time. It's now 9/10 as a big dive comes from Peru on the inside for second place against Sri Lanka, and the job is done. Or is it? Side by side they ran. Sri Lanka given no room at all. They're both off the road. Sri Lanka hangs on to the place. There wasn't a lot that Yevan David could do there, and in fairness to Peru, Andres Cardenas didn't really force the issue. He's on the outside line coming out of 2. He now gets the squeeze. Up the curb at 3 goes Sri Lanka, but the job is done at 4. Finally through on the inside line goes Peru. Great racing.
Really great racing. Cars running wide. Who's at front of the apex? Let's have a look and determine if that was fair. I think it was all fair because they both were using the maximum part of track limits to their positive, shall we say. And I think now Peru looks like they've got pace, but look at the Spanish car. That has gone. 1.6 seconds is the gap nearly there. As we see United Kingdom now on the attack. Sri Lanka look like they're struggling in the mid part of this race.
And Austria being given the driving standards flag. Oscar Wirtz then being warned about track limit offences. Yawn, here they go again. But it's the same for everybody. The drivers know what the regulation is. Getting a replay here of Yevan David for Sri Lanka being squeezed out wide at turn 1. But in fairness, Cardenas didn't try and gain there because I think he might have realised he would have been in some strife with the officials. But he did try round the outside at turn 2. But it's really at 4 where the road comes to him and he secures the place.
Yeah, great move. Really good foresight, realising where to place the car when, and knowing that the car and the track would then come into your favour. United Kingdom still not past Sri Lanka yet, so maybe Sri Lanka are now just settling themselves, getting ready for another one. But look at the gap. Peru, they're catching Spain. That gap has just diminished slightly, so we're again just starting to see a different car looking fast. Peru looking really good.
Indeed, so Peru was impressive in qualifying this morning. And look, even for penultimate place, they are side by side with Norway and Qatar squabbling. And Norway goes ahead there. Olav Var goes ahead. That's your leader. That's Spain. That's second. It's Peru. Third, Sri Lanka. Fourth, UK. Fifth, Luxembourg. And now the gaps are just starting to open up between that leading quintet and Slovakia sixth. In the background, you can see Matus Riba, the son of Martin Riba, who's been a touring car and a Lamborghini Super Trofeo racer, the man behind the Brutal Fish team, Riba meaning fish, and Matus Riba trying to shake off Israel, Japan, and in his efforts to do so, he's dropping back from that leading quintet. But right now, the lead gap is up to 1.5 seconds, give or take, so it's going to be hard for Peru now to catch Spain.
Yeah, just watching this next lap, they took 1/2 out in Sector 1, Peru to Spain. Let's see if he can get it sub 1 minute, 1.4, sorry, at the end of Sector 2, out of turn 11. We will break the beam for that one there. Cars using all the track and more. Yeah, look at the gap, 1.1. This is on. Peru, I think, will be 7/10 by the end of the lap as they get a part of the slipstream on the pit straight. Vert still running close as well to the car in front of Czech Republic. So looking to the inside, big lockup as well there, getting it stopped. Yes, just. Are they going to stay legal? Yes. And I expect Verts then to cut to the inside as he does to block the inside. Great move.
Yeah, that was Austria making a pretty big dive against Serbia. Andrea Kostic losing out against Oscar Verts for Austria. So a good effort that, and Wirtz goes through, although Kostic tries to fight back as they drop down towards turn 1. They're going to be side by side again, and Kostic on the outside tries to go all the way around the outside of Wirtz. Let's see what happens. They're almost touching wheels as they break for turn 2. Kostic on the outside. Austria stays ahead, but only just. Serbia slots back in behind.
Great racing, really fair. Lots of space being afforded. Brazil look to fill the space there, now being overtaken themselves.
And Peru have done the fastest lap. So Andres Cardenas has done the fastest lap of the race, and the gap down from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. So it's on now, I think. The chase is on between Peru against Spain. Further back, the battles continue with Brazil there, gaining ground on the inside. Matheus Comparato qualified badly, but 11th at the start of the lap, looking to gain ground.
Yeah, he's on the defence, isn't he, against same-speaking country of Portugal to the outside, nearly 3 wide under braking for T8, just all trying to get the switch back on each other. United Kingdom have closed the gap as well now. That's down to 3/10. Battles all the way down here. Portugal looking nice and calm behind the wheel. Lock up for Brazil, runs wide. Can Portugal pounce? No. Brazil closes that door nice and positively. Vert starting to get a little closer to the Japanese car in front as well. There's a lot to look at here, almost too much.
Can I offer you the first recipient of the When It's Not Your Day, It's Not Your Day award? It is Qatar driver Badr Al Sulaiti, who has been given a 5-second penalty for track limit offences, followed by a 10-second penalty for track limit offences, and he's last anyway. So the poor chap, new to F4, is having a pretty tough time. Now, for the race lead, we're down to 0.6 of a second. It's gone from 1.4 to 1 to 0.6 over the last 2 laps.
Yeah, 3 and 4 tenths gained on the last 2 laps alone. So this gap could evaporate in another couple of laps. I think what Peru need to do here is strike while the iron's hot. When you catch is one thing, but how you overtake is another. You've got to use the momentum that's afforded you as you've closed the gap, but don't sit there and wait. Hit early and hard.
More updates from the penalty hotline is that now there's a drive-through going the way of Qatar, and a 5-second penalty is also being offered up to Austria. Oscar Wirtz is being given a 5-second penalty, but a drive-through now, because of already having had 2 time penalties, going the way of the Qatar driver, who is, as I say, in last place anyway, and clearly struggling, and now a drive-through is just going to add to the woes.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard one from there. Just a little worried if there was a drive-through. It's going to potentially mean that car from Qatar gets lapped towards the end of the race as well, which might add a bit of spice that's not needed. Gap coming down, Peru to Spain. What's it going to be? Where's the move going to be? We saw a great overtake from Peru into turn 1 on Sri Lanka 4 laps or so ago. I think that's a good opportunity at the end of this straight. Let's just watch the gap flow all the way down. 0.6 of a second. To me, that looks more like 4.5 tenths as they cross the line. Let's see.
Andres Cardenas then in second place, was 0.6 of a second back. He's still 0.6 of a second back. In fact, he was the gold winner of the karting sprint junior medal in the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. It's this perennial problem with karting, isn't it? It's only kind of really interesting 2 or 3 years after the drivers have moved out of it, and then you start to realise who they are, and then you look back and you see all these names that have done so well in it, but at the time you don't really know that much about them. But certainly drawing attention to himself now is Andres Cardenas, because he's catching the race leader. He was second in the Winter Series for F4 at the start of this year. He's been racing in the Spanish Championship this season, and he's virtually now on the back, isn't he, of Juan Cota for Spain. So it's Spain versus Peru, and we are not that far now away from the end of the race, because the clock ticks on down. We've only got 6 minutes of what's been a really lively race to go.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 more laps at the end of this one, so not many opportunities to take the top spot to start on pole position for the race, deciding the medals tomorrow for the F4 cars. Nice shot there, the Sri Lankan car dropping back. United Kingdom still close, not close enough for an obvious move at the moment, but close enough to maybe pounce if a mistake is done by that Sri Lankan car in front.
Race leaders go through, and there for United Kingdom is Reza Seaworthen, who is chasing after Yevon David, who I think will be a bit miffed, really, after what happened at the start and losing that race lead. But, interestingly, the pace has never quite been there, and I wonder whether there was any damage to the car in that little bit of contact with Spain, and whether it's not quite 100%.
Yeah, it was only a small amount, wasn't it? I couldn't see anything obvious on the nose cone, which looked like the point of impact, but, yeah, considering he was vying for the lead, and then to drop off this aggressively, would maybe say there has been some issue there. Be interesting to find out later. Everyone's just starting to settle down. The battle packs are just spread a little bit. I say that as a move pops up into turn 1. Great move, gets the car stopped, really nice. Brazil there losing a place to Czech Republic. Really good move. Peru again looks even closer again to me.
We've got another penalty heading the way now of Serbia. And we've also got Qatar in the pits, so whether that's the drive-through or it's something more sinister, we will reveal in due course. With now the race into its final 5 minutes, time has flown by in this. It's been a really lively race, really good stuff from the F4 category, as it always is at the FIA Motorsport Games.
Yeah, less than 5 minutes and less than 5 tenths between the leaders here. So, yeah, I wonder what the mindset is here for Peru. How aggressive do you want to be? You're starting on the front row. How important is it to be starting in first versus second? It's definitely not important enough to DNF, but ego, I think, will also come into play there. Again, as we look at the graphics, that gap has just started not to close up quite as quickly as we were seeing. I think that's maybe a bit of dirty air. Maybe Peru just used the tyre a little hard, gaining on Spain.
But now, Peru and Spain coming onto the pit straight, long pit straight. If there's any benefit from the slipstream, it's going to be now, isn't it? So possibly Peru to be closer by the end of the pit straight. It was half a second last time when they came over the stripe, and this time Spain to Peru. That's still the order for the top two, and the margin is 0.571 of a second betwixt them. Down they head then, in towards turn one. Qatar, by the way, did serve the drive-through, has rejoined, but possibly to be lapped as the leaders go by. Still third Sri Lanka, fourth United Kingdom, fifth Luxembourg, and sixth is Slovakia.
We see another defence this time, Brazil on Portugal. We've seen that battle going on for the last 5 or 6 laps. Portugal still not able to get past Brazil to the inside of turn number 2. Looks like further enough along this time, get it stopped, rotate it in. Good move from Portugal there.
Yeah.
And I think they've got pace to burn. I think they might be able to gap Brazil over the last couple of laps.
A really quirky one in this has been Israel. Ariel Elkin got himself up to 7th on the opening lap and has then, unfortunately, not progressed. He's been stuck in the traffic, never been able to get past Matus Riba, whereas others, and the Peruvian driver, Andres Cardenas is an example of it, have been able to get through the traffic, and he is almost on the tail of the race leader again. Here they are, coming now up from turn 10 to 11. For third place, it is still Yevan David ahead of Riza Siwerthan, the United Kingdom representative. Into turn 11 they come. There are the race leaders, and 2 3/4 minutes on the clock. So certainly 2 more laps at the end of this, I would have thought.
Yeah, agreed with that. So you can see Sri Lanka running a little wide for the last couple of corners. That will just give a little bit of hope to this United Kingdom car that he can get his way round and up to the final podium position. No medals in this race. Look at Reza working hard behind the wheel there. Nice rotation. Rear of the car moving for him well to help get round that final tricky corner at 14.
Riza Siwerthan then for United Kingdom, part of the ever-growing Edge Management stable, the company that's run by Phil Glue, racer, broadcaster himself, who's got this good knack of being able to find young, talented drivers in karting, in junior Ginetta racing or junior single-seater ranks, and looking after them in that early part of their career. And in Riza Siwerthan, he's got another very, very capable driver, race winner in British Formula 4 this year. But Riza has not quite, for the UK, been able to find that last couple of attempts to have a go at Yevin David of Sri Lanka.
Yeah, it's always hard. New team for him this weekend. New track as well, not turned a lap here before the weekend. But yeah, you allude to the management companies. They're so important for these young drivers to be guided in the world of motorsport. It's very hard to pick your path on the way through, and finding a management company like Edge is very, very important. So any young drivers out there looking a bit lost, then I would definitely look to getting a management company involved.
Well, right now, Juan Cota is managing this lead situation very effectively indeed. He's fended off the Peruvian car, really, for the second half of the race, and they're going to have one more lap to run at the end of this. And are we seeing the answer to your question of how Peru plays this? Because Cardenas is close, but he's never really forced the issue. He's not come charging up the inside. He's not constantly darting around in the mirrors. It looks as though if a gap was presenting itself, he might go for it. And if this were the medal race, he might go for it, but he's content to sit there and make sure he's on the front row. Yeah,
another factor as well, they have to use these tyres in the race as well later. So a lot of the drivers almost wary of that, and I think that's why we're not seeing many lockups. They're all being tentative on the brakes because they know the important race for these tyres is the next time out tomorrow. And I think that is exactly what Peru have done. They've realised they've done a mega job, and let's not waste it now by pushing too hard at the wrong point onto the final lap.
Time penalty for track limits has gone to Argentina's Gino Trapper. Spain leading the way. They've had a really good start to the FIA Motorsport Games. As I said before the start of this race, leading the medal table at the moment, Spain. No medals on this, but pole position for the medal gaining race later on in the weekend is going to be quite something then, as the cars then wriggle their way up once more to the back part of the circuit. And this is the short straight that blasts you over the top of the circuit. Kink at turn 7, corner at turn 8, and it's a 14-corner lap. Still nose to tail, but I think Spain, barring a mistake, is on for a race win.
Yep, only 3 more brake zones to go. 1 into turn 11 here. As long as you don't lock up and run deep, you're okay. Looks okay. Peru placing the car nicely. 2 more brakes to go into turn number 12. It's a very short brake, very fast right-hander coming up. So open the corner up, little brake, chuck it in and go. Now you've got the trickiest corner of the lap in my opinion, turn 14. It looks very composed for the full 20-minute race. I expect nothing else from Cota Alonso into the last corner.
And one corner to go. It's a left-hander as well. 20 minutes for the qualifying race, 30 for the main race, which is on Sunday. This Saturday qualifying race, though, is going to be won by Spain. Juan Cota accelerates up towards the checkered flag. Spanish driver wins on home soil in the qualifying race for the Formula 4 discipline at the 2024 FIA Motorsport Games. It is Peru second, Andres Cardenas third to Sri Lanka, Yevan David, United Kingdom fourth, fifth Luxembourg, and sixth was a virtual dead heat, I think, as they came across the line. But it was just Slovakia ahead by 71 thousandths from Israel, then Japan, then Austria, and then Serbia to round out the top 10. But that is provisional, that order, with a capital provisional, because we've been told that all track limits will be investigated after the session. So race control is going to be busy. There's a good reason, I suspect, why the qualifying race is a day before the main race. It's going to take a long time to make sure that the order is correct, ready for the grid to be formed for the medal-winning main race. But for the moment, we can celebrate the achievements of Juan Cota, because that was a really measured drive. And in fairness, he had to battle his way off the start to get the race lead, tick. Then he tried to build a gap, tick. He lost the gap, but he did not crack under the pressure.
Yeah, he also got roughed up into turn one. He got a knock from the rear, so that would have played on his mind as well. But yeah, didn't put a foot wrong. And yes, we talk about track limits, but every time we saw the lead two anyway, they all looked very precise. So I think they should be okay for their grid positions tomorrow. And yeah, they are starting in the perfect place to go and try and get another gold medal for their nation.
So the medals table currently, this is all based on rallying of Friday at the FIA Motorsport Games. Spain leading Italy and United Kingdom third. By the end of the day, that could change a little bit more, because there will be other disciplines like GT, for example, that will come to a close. Esports has been rattling on as well. There's an F4 element of esports, the virtual competition with an F4 aspect to that. There's a GT competition and a Formula 4 as well. So there's plenty of single-seater action, whether it's real or virtual. The provisional result of the qualifying race at the FIA Motorsport Games in Formula 4 shows a win for Spain from Peru, third Sri Lanka, the United Kingdom fourth ahead of Luxembourg, and then Slovakia. The top 10 rounded out by Israel, Japan, Australia and Czechia, the Czech Republic. The drivers, it's Juan Cota who can celebrate the win for Spain, for the home country, from Peruvian Andres Cardenas, and Sri Lankan driver Yevan David fending off Reza Seaworthen from the UK. Luxembourg's Chester Kiefer was ahead of Slovakia's Martos Riba. Israel's Ariel Alkin 7th from Toshio Moriyama. Griffin Peebles was behind the Japanese driver, 9th for Australia, and it was the Czech Max Kahan who rounded out the top 10. And a word about the Team Qatar representative, Beda Al-Sulaiti, who had myriad time penalties and a drive-through, but in fairness, persevered, went back out, carried on, and just learning all the time will be of great benefit.
Yeah, especially at such a competitive level like this, be able to review the data after the race to see exactly what they could have done. You can see the Sri Lankan driver there finishing third, but again, body language, after you start the race on pole position, it's quite hard to accept anything but a win.
Indeed so. Well, the winning drivers, they're making their way to Parc Fermé. The podiums only come on the medal-winning races, and they are separate medal ceremonies within the paddock, within the village. And we'll be looking at some of those over the course of the weekend, no doubt. In the background, you can see the drift track that is getting itself ready for more action, with lots of fans lining the course. You've also, within the paddock, got the rally service park, and the rally teams will be heading back in because they have a special stage here at the end of the day. So there's the drifting in action. And because you've now got that to the competitive part of the weekend, they go in tandem. But it's all a bit more sedate in the pit lane. It's all a bit calmer as the teams check the cars. The Pirelli tyre technicians get their data, get the pressures. And how do those tyres look after 20 minutes of racing?
They look pretty good. After an in-lap, you always get a bit of pickup, and they're the sort of splodges you can see on that. They will clean the tyres manually by hand in between the races to make sure that isn't there for the start of the race. But yeah, couldn't see any lock-up marks like we saw yesterday in free practice 2. Some of those cars down to canvas. I only saw a handful of lockups over the whole race, over all 21 cars. So yeah, I think everyone just was looking after those tyres for the big event tomorrow.
I love the fact that in this modern age of all the telemetry, all the data, we talk about splodges. But for Yevan David, a decent race, but I think he'll be disappointed that he couldn't convert pole position into the win. But equally, from the second row of the grid, he's in the mix, I think, for the main race to come tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, there's no damage on the front of that car either. We thought there wasn't, but it was obviously some contact, but got away with it. So I don't think that's going to be one of the driver excuses out of the thousands he's going to pull out the hat for that one. And
no.
Yeah, back to the drawing board on why he didn't win.
But it was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because he obviously had the pace to be that close, to make contact, and then dropped away, lost a place, and fell away from the top two in the end. He was 5 seconds back from the second place car. So there was clearly something not quite right for Jeven David. Maybe they just got a really good setup for the damp road this morning and it didn't quite translate to a fully dry circuit. We'll find out, no doubt. So we'll look down from the drone at the permanent circuit here in Valencia. Of course, there was for a brief period a street circuit for Formula One, and the circuit here celebrating 25 years of being operational. Very popular circuit for motorbikes as well as for cars. And the race-winning Spanish driver, Juan Cota, is a very happy man as he gets ready for tomorrow's main race in F4. Qualifying race for Formula 4 at the FIA Motorsport Games began with a slow start for 1 or 2 and a not perfect start for the pole sitter from Sri Lanka. Jeven David lost his lead to Spain. Juan Cota was ahead by the time they got to turn 1. And for Peru, Andres Cardenas had a look on the inside as well as they went into that first corner. He wasn't quite able to make the move stick. And then there was a little bit of contact between Sri Lanka and Spain as David almost got into the back of the race leader. Didn't do too much damage, but Sri Lanka lost pace and started to fall down the pack as others explored just about as much of the Valencia circuit as was possible so to do. Penalties for track limits came thick and fast, but so also did the overtakes. Brazil losing out as through on the inside when the Czech car, driven by Max Carhan, and others were running wide on the curb coming out of turn 1 as they battle their way through 20 minutes of grid-deciding action. Up into second place went Peru. Andres Cardenas getting ahead of Sri Lanka. Jeven David running in wide at turn 1, but having to cede the fight at turn 4 with next behind them, Riza Seaworthy looking to try to make progress as well. The Czech Republic entry still fighting its way up the order, but up front it was Spain ahead of Peru, and that is how it would end at the checkered flag, with the order deciding the grid for the main race. Spain didn't put a wheel wrong, Peru didn't force the issue, and it's going to come down to Sunday's main race to decide the medals. But the qualifying race won by Spain, Juan Cota the driver, and a popular win on home soil. And Juan Cota for Spain will start on pole position for the main race on Sunday.